Hello, hi, and welcome to the Terminal Podcast, where in the end, it's all about the numbers. I'm your host, Martin Kester, and we have four flights landing safely at my fictional terminal tonight. Names and faces are on the screen as you can read, but who are we actually going to be listening to? A look deeper into their souls in a second. But for starters, let's get an introduction with their names, where they're fictionally flying in from, extra points for the correct airport call letters, and what they're drinking this evening. We'll go in alphabetical order. That means we're starting with you, Miss Amira.
Hi, my name is Amira. I just flew in from LAX. I'm drinking. I'm an alcoholic, so I don't drink, but I just have lemon water. Yeah.
Okay. Next up would be Dr. D.
I'm flying in from EWR, Newark Airport, and I'll have a double whiskey since Amira's not drinking. I'll have two. One for me, one for her.
That would leave us to Joe.
So my name is Joe. I'm also coming from EWR. You stole mine. That's the closest one that I know. But I am drinking water. I'm like, this is my first time I've ever been on a podcast, so I'm a little nervous. But I have some water, so water's good.
We'll try and make it as rough as possible.
Thank you. Hazing is the way to go.
Just trying to be as helpful as possible. Lindsay, you're up next.
So my name is Lindsay Barnes. I'm flying in. Well, I get to type in when I search for a flight NYC, which qualifies me for EWR, LGA, and JFK because I'm smack dab in the middle. I'm drinking water, although you wouldn't know it by my rambling. But I have requested a tequila. However, my husband is currently tending the children in the other room, so I don't know when that's coming.
Okay. All right. Promotional transition in 2, 1. And I mentioned earlier about looking into my guest's souls. Well, an easy way to learn more about anyone is to find their musical preferences so one can judge and make wild presumptions based on a tune that struck the fancy of a teenager decades ago. It's a dedication to these excessive syllables that makes the RDAT what it is. What is the RDAT, you ask? Well, it's the rap debut album tournament, of course. What's that, you ask? It is what it sounds like, the greatest tournament ever put on to determine the best rap album ever. The results are already in and available at martinkester.com, but opinions are always welcome, and as our eventual returns to the RDAT. But that's neither here nor there. Promotional transition aside, we're here to play a game, one based on guessing the right number to random questions that I ask. The Price is Right rules, so Price is Right rules will apply. So closest to the number without going over will be used to address who will address the topic first and get that first question. Numbers add up, and since there are multiple questions, there will be a winning number. Passenger closest to that number earns the final gate call, 30 seconds to close the show, and entertain us with the topic of your choice before catching your flight back home. Now that I've explained the rules, I've got one thing to say. Game blouses. With just those two words, I've either lost you completely or you know exactly who and what I'm talking about. The quote is from a skit from a show that was canceled about 15 years ago and has been regaled and revered ever since. I'm speaking of Chappelle's Show and the 48-year-old star of the sketch comedy show that lasted just 2 seasons on Comedy Central. Dave Chappelle grew up idolizing Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor. At just 19 years old, he was on HBO's Def Comedy Jam, doing a stand-up routine that would send him across the country with the occasional movie appearance thrown in. All of this is before Chappelle's Show made him a household name. He left, went to Africa, returned, signed a deal with Netflix. The number that I'm going to ask for to start all of this is the amount Dave Chappelle earned between June of 2017 and June of 2018, according to CelebrityNetWorth.com. So you know it's got to be right. So that's the number we're looking for. And Amira, you will start first.
3 million?
3 million?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. D?
20 million.
20 million. I'm taking notes, so that's why I'm looking down. But Joe, you're next.
$50,000.25.
$50,000.25. Numbers do add up. So
Yeah.
50,000.
Lindsay's going 0 or $1.
25 cents. It is Price is Right, so that is a possibility. Or you could go. The highest we have is 20 million, so you could go 20 million one. The choice is yours, Lindsay. As the last, the choice is yours.
Oh, you know I'm going 20 million and a penny.
Okay. Well, that 20 million and a penny turns out to be the right answer, or at least the right number for right now. He actually, according to Celebrity Net Worth, made 35 million in that calendar year. He's recently returned the spotlight with the release of his latest and his last comedy special for Netflix titled The Closer, but that same spotlight seems a bit sour due to subject matter, leading a company statement, employee walkout, and a whole lot of other things that you can search on the internet if you'd like. But the question that I ask, and Lindsay, you get to start, is as a comedian, and I'm surrounded by a room of comedians, are you allowed to push the line anymore? Is that something a comedian is allowed to do?
I think at this point in time where there just doesn't seem to be an adult in the room of society in general, comedians are almost expected to push the line. However, and I think this is very important, and sometimes the bigger the comedians get, the more we lose sight of it. Certainly when they're not as big, it needs to be funny. When they're bigger and it has a bigger platform, then I think the line blurs on the humor into the conversations that they're starting.
So it doesn't sound like it's a yes or no or a one way or nothing. Dr. D, is that about right? Where it's just this, it's a wiggly wobbly, timey wimey sort of thing that could go anywhere.
Well, I'm going to get in trouble here with what I say, but I think it also depends. I think Lindsay makes a great point. Depends on the level that you're at. But I do think, and everyone's going to snarl at me because I am the hetero, cisgendered, white Christian male here in this audience. But I think
otherwise known as oppressor. But
right, yeah, overseer, oppressor, whatever name you want to come up with. But I think the line that I can push is certainly different than the line Lindsay can push, or the line Joe can push, or the line Amira can push, because just of my immutable characteristics. And I don't say that's neither right nor wrong. I just think there's a different line that can be pushed.
Okay. Are you making a privilege argument, Chris?
Sorry,
yeah, sort of.
From a place of privilege, and thus you can push the line.
No, I think my line is shorter now.
So does that mean Amira, who doesn't, her name gives the appearance of something, but I couldn't tell immediately what race, what creed, or anything like that she is. So does she have a line? Because she could be anything. I ask you, Dr. D, because you brought up line.
Oh no, ask Amira.
I'll ask her next, but I'm curious because you brought up lines before. Do you think she has a line?
I think if she identifies, her ethnicity or her gender, or not gender, excuse me. I think her ethnicity is sort of blurred, or her what's the word I'm looking for? Her I want to say background, but what's the word? Her heritage, or what? I'm sorry.
Nationality.
Yeah, your nationality or your nationality origin.
So because that's blurred, Amira, do you feel that because your nationality isn't front and center and clear and present right away, that your line is blurred, that you kind of have a freedom to do whatever you want?
I don't know. I've never heard from anyone saying that it was blurred. I felt like people knew I was Spanish. No. I mean, it is. I think it is kind of like they don't know what it is, but they know I'm not white. Like, so I feel like I get something, but I know like maybe like second joke in, I say like I'm Muslim, and then another joke I say I'm Arab. So I do identify. So, but I don't think you get a free pass just because you're a person of color. Like,
Well, no,
you know,
I wasn't saying it was a free pass. I think that's why I think Joe was going to attack me, and I love Joe, and I know. No, I
Always
wasn't
nothing
saying it
but
was a
love
free
for you,
pass. I
my
just think the line definitely is moved. The line is not in one place for a
Right.
myriad of reasons, is what I'm saying.
yeah, and also it depends on like your personality and how you carry yourself on stage. Like you could be like super serious and just like deadpan, and people would not like, you know, if you're pushing the line, like they would not like that. But then if you're like me, I smile a lot, I'm very charismatic, people like me. Modest. I
Yeah, and modest.
probably get away with a lot. And
So-
then like if I make fun of Arabs, I could get like away with it because I'm Arab myself. And then like I was doing a mic where I was like concerned about doing a racist joke, and they were like, no, that's not racist at all. But then I did an Arab joke, and they're like, I think that one's racist, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm Arab, so you know,
So
like,
what's more important, if it offends or if it's funny?
um
And,
I mean,
when I say if it offends, I mean like that if you tell a joke and it offends, but it is funny. Where you know what's more important there? It's like it's offensive, but it's getting laughs. So
Joe, I think you should go.
All jokes have to be rooted in truth in order for any of them to work. So if you are just putting out just hate and you know it from the audience perspective won't even feel good. I don't think it would even be funny if it was just hate for the sake of hate. If they're speaking at some level of truth, then the joke fundamentally works. I think, you know. And so if you're just speaking from a void, then you're already not starting from a place that even is in an environment to be funny.
Okay. I'm going to stop trying to be funny for a second and bring someone else who was funny that I saw on Facebook and have used before and will use again. James Hodge. I thought one of these comedians may be new, but I guess not. Anyway, he posted, and I thought it was relevant to what I was saying, which is you don't have to agree with everything Dave Chappelle said in his last special, but seeing how John Gruden got caught saying racist shit about a black man and was allowed to keep his job, but when it came out, Gruden said something homophobic, he was unemployed within 2 hours, certainly gives credence to his overall point. And his overall point was to the sense that basically people are trans until they don't need to be trans anymore, and then they can be white, you know, or something like that. Like the race sort of oversees and supersedes their sexual preference or orientation at times.
Well,
I guess I'll just
as
leave that
somebody
there
who-
sort of just as a tennis ball. Good, Joe. You feel you have anything toward that? I know you didn't see the special, but
I didn't. But
just based off of the concept that it didn't take long for Gruden. Gruden said a lot of bad stuff, but it was the homophobic line that got him fired. That suddenly everybody jumped up about. It was Chappelle had one of the most famous things Chappelle did is a racist Klan member who's black. But he's
Clayton
blind.
Bigsby, yeah, that's my man. Yeah.
And that doesn't get anything, but he mentions about these jokes about trans people, and it's a problem, and and that is so. Just as comedians in general, just your thoughts, Lindsay. You got anything?
To a certain extent, it felt like the message of Chappelle's special was proven with the uproar. Right or wrong, however you feel about it, the point he was making, it people in the same way that this happened with Gruden, people were more offended by his trans content than his racist content, if you will. And that is a very common problem in the world. And so does him proving that point, does it make it right? Is it good? That is like more of a gray area, but it definitely is like, well, yeah, that's what he was saying, that he was going to get down for that and not like, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Amira, have you seen the special?
I saw up to that part and then I kind of got bored. I don't know. He doesn't. I don't feel like he's funny. So.
I was gonna say because that is the question though. If you didn't find it funny, then it doesn't make a difference, right? I was gonna say if it's not funny, then it doesn't make a difference what it's being said. If it's not funny, it's not funny.
Yeah. So I'm like, why do you have to even go there? Like, you can just say other things and make people laugh and not even test the waters and, like, you know, risk losing people that will buy tickets, and, you know, you can even lose your career after saying some stuff. So I mean,
but
I don't know.
Dr. D,
well, Joe looks like he has something to say. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
I just wanted to put this out there, that we spend so much time thinking about entertainers that are being good role models or not good role models, putting out good messages, not putting out good messages. When we have politicians who actually have power that are using their words in really horrific ways, not to bring politics into it, but I think that the idea that we're focused so much on content creators, I think is we're placing a lot of weight on something where they don't have as much power, I think, as people who are actually making governmental decisions to make sure that they're using their voices in a more responsible way.
Martin, I'm looking for the text. Didn't we have this exact text before while we were talking about this?
You can't find it. I was gonna say I didn't want to go away.
I can't find. We were talking about a buddy of ours, a good buddy of ours, Dan, that we grew up with.
Oh,
who basically, where was that in the text thread? I can't find it. Where he basically said years ago, Joe, he said, we're always so worried about like our athletes behaving badly. What about the people we elect?
Yeah, 100%.
that's a good point.
Don't hold them to a higher standard.
Yeah. Martin said, was this you, Martin? Yeah, he said, we forget about politicians promised almost immediately, but sports coaches, we hold them to a much higher standard.
I agree.
And sadly, most sports coaches make as much, if not more, than the politicians. But that's money shouldn't be an issue or a part of this problem and concept and such like that. And this is all horrible ways for me to try and transition to me transitioning to this week's transitions, which are going to be brought to you by the same unanswerable questions like, what do people who are born deaf hear when they think? Is the word Q just the letter Q followed by 4 silent letters? And where do they put the Bible in the library? Fiction or nonfiction? Now,
that might be the best question anyone's ever asked.
The last one's a setup because if you ask the first host of Saturday Night Live that question, he'd be sure to tell you fiction. But to do that would require a shaman or a time machine, because it's unfortunate that George Carlin is no longer with us. But his influence will remain with us forever. The number that I'm looking for, according to GeorgeCarlin.com, is how many extensive TV appearances Carlin had on long forgotten shows like Merv Griffin or Mike Douglas or The Tonight Show, when that still meant something, in 1965 and 66 alone. So the number I'm looking for, how many times did Carlin appear on the top brand late night talk shows of the era in 1965 and 66? And Lindsay, since you were closest last time, you get to go first this time.
31.
31. Chris, Dr. D, I apologize.
27.
27. I mind remember. No, you did that. Amira?
88.
88.
It's a busy year.
Joe?
I'm going to go with 52.
52. And 52 actually will get you the answer, at least for this, because it's 58.
Get out. Nice.
58.
That's one appearance a week, basically.
Basically, it's going to say he was working. It's going to say
over 2 years, right? That was 2
years, 65 and 66.
Okay.
So, but
That's still a lot.
it's a comedian. He's
Yeah.
only got so many bits.
Didn't
He's
work.
only got so much stuff.
And what were
But,
there? Four
over-
channels?
Yeah. That's almost as many times as Bill Burr's on Conan in an average month. So
Carlin was on The Tonight Show over 130 times, and that's from Jack Parr to Johnny Carson and then to Leno. His stand-up act was different from his television appearances, and was what appealed to the counterculture crowds that purchased his comedy albums, that eventually led to him getting his first of 4 Grammys and an arrest for 7 words that you can't say on television, a routine that reached the U.S. Supreme Court and changed legal history. So, Joe, as a comedian in the wake of Carlin, how important is knowing Carlin's history, is knowing about the things that he went through and had to suffer through and had to deal with to get to where he is, to future generations of comedians?
I think it's important when it definitely connects with your question earlier about if you can push the line, and just the idea of censorship and the history of censorship and kind of shaking things up for the purpose of shaking things up. I think that is a major legacy there. I think when I think of George Carlin, I go back to the time with George, right? Time for George, where he was kind of straight-laced, would come out and have his very clean bits, about time and
tie.
yeah. And do you have the time? Like all these cool, little bits that I almost think about it in terms of like the Beatles. If you look at like A Hard Day's Night, 1964, versus going to their albums in 1968, 69, they got so much more experimental over what, I can't believe it's only 4 years. But for the sake of not rambling too much, you definitely see George Carlin come into his own and really kind of push the system in a way that I think is very commendable for any comedian to kind of hopefully have that arc where you kind of start off in what's really safe, what kind of gets you in the door to be heard. And then when you get your own voice, to be able to just express it the way you choose to. So,
Lindsay,
that would be my answer.
Where do you see Carlin in your stand-up comedy?
Well,
if at all.
No, I do. Well, I aspire to. I don't know if it's actually evident, but for sure, I would like an audience to walk away from a show and think of me as someone who has put a lot of thought into their act, who has kind of passion behind what they're saying, who isn't just saying funny words to get like that. They, I don't know his exact quote, but I believe it was something to the effect of, he's not trying to make the audience think, but he wants the audience to know that he thinks. Mm-hmm. And, I think leading with smart material and letting your audience find you is brave. And obviously his trajectory was really more to develop the audience and then kind of just shed that audience as he developed his voice and as he evolved into the more progressive, free-thinking comedian that we kind of are more familiar with in his later work. But I would love for people to kind of walk away from my set and think, she's smart.
Well, I'm not really smart or brave, but I do like to say shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. Those are the seven deadly words that you can't say, that you couldn't say on television. Amira, how many of those words are in your act?
I don't think any of them. I mostly just like the worst thing maybe I've said is like whore or something. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe my newer stuff, not like my polished stuff I do in shows, might have some swears, but yeah, I don't. The deadly ones, not really.
See, I hear you saying swears. So do you almost view that as a different type of comedy in terms of using swear words, so to speak?
I think I grew up religious, but then like, obviously you want to rebel. So I do swear, but like not for no reason. Like I'm not gonna just talk and like every other word is gonna be a swear. So like I could do clean comedy or I could just have my dirty jokes. But when I do dirty jokes, I'm like, you guys, I'm doing a dirty joke. Strap in. So I'm not really that comfortable. Yeah, I know you're gonna go there, but so yeah, I think I'm more comfortable doing clean comedy or not swearing, but yeah.
Dr. D, I'm assuming the D is for dirty. So how many of those words are in your act?
Well, I actually, I mean, you know me more as a human and how disgusting I am. And my comedy is pretty disgusting too. However, I agree with Amira. I hate the obligatory curse word for the curse word's sake. Mm-hmm. I do this bit that I open with about having phone sex with this lady and talking about orgasms, and she says something disgusting to me because that's just the bit. But I'm not like going out of my way to be more vulgar or to use more bad words. And I think curse words, again, you see this a lot with newer comedians. We've all been in open mics and stuff, and you see newer comedians, and they want to curse a lot because they think that's funny. And this is not one of my better jokes, but it's one of my one-liner jokes that I wrote years ago. And it's, do you think a horse ever comes out of the barn in the morning and goes, fucking oats again? But if you don't say fucking oats, it's not funny at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you just say oats again, like it's not, fucking makes it funny.
Yes.
Okay.
So there has to be a purpose for using those words in a bit.
I will put this up as a volleyball before I transition. This is from another controversial comedian. Ricky Gervais is quoted to say, please stop saying you can't joke about anything anymore. You can joke about whatever the fuck you like. And some people won't like it, and they will tell you that they don't like it. And then it's up to you whether you give a fuck or not, and so on. It's a good system. Joe, yes, no, maybe so.
I think there are some topics that there's a much higher premium on the quality of the joke. Like, for example, like slavery is a topic that is, to me, like objectively, like so unfunny. But when you look at Key and Peele and the way that they address, like they have the one bit of them on the block, and it's just like so well written and well thought and well done, and that I can respect. But for that kind of topic, I have a very high premium for what I'm going to actually find funny. But I do think that there can be humor found in just about any topic. I don't think that there's any like totally off I don't think there's anything truly off limits. And I think that also has to do with your proximity to that topic. I think that if you are speaking, again, it's about truth. Like if you are totally speaking out of your depth about an issue, then that's not going to be funny anyway for you. So that would be my answer.
What's the most out of crazy wild topic that you go off on?
I mean, I have a Holocaust joke. I joke. I curse in my set, which is funny because a lot of people's feedback is that I have a clean set because I talk about my kids, but I curse in front of my kids. I say fuck. I say cunt. My husband's English. I'm desensitized to the word cunt. It bears no weight. I mean, if you've heard an English comedian or Jim Jeffries, like, there are certain people that use the word and it doesn't mean anything. I'm more offended by the word tits, to be honest. I would never use that word in a set. I was at a show the other day. Two separate comedians went in on clit. Don't do that for me. So there are various things that I recoil from in the way that other people recoil from some of the words that I'm very comfortable with. And again, I think it just boils down to, at the end of the day, is it funny? Are you making people laugh amongst the handful that you might be offending as well?
Yeah. And to just chime in real quick, you can't possibly know what everybody in your audience is going to like or not like.
Of course.
So you can't, poll test everything. You just can't do it. We're all too individual in our tastes. So
I had and again, not the humble brag here, like Amira saying, what did Amira say? She smiles and people like her. What did she?
Yeah, I'm charismatic.
Charismatic, that's right. I had a comedy producer tell me once when I was doing a showcase for him, and I really went with what I thought was my best material, and it went really well, and it was a lot of my one-liner stuff, which Joe has seen probably every one of those jokes, or just about every one of those jokes, and he said what he said to me, and I didn't even realize this, Lindsay, and it goes back to you about like the writing, is it intelligent? He said to me, he goes, what I love about a bunch of your jokes that can be considered offensive, he goes, you go to the line, he goes, but you make the audience go over the line. Like, I don't say the offensive part. I have it's sort of a Holocaust-ish joke. But I don't, because I don't say Holocaust, I don't say anything like that. But it's the audience that says sort of the punchline in their head. And it's offensive.
And if I could give you props too, Chris, Dr. D, that you also, when you say those jokes, that are going to be offensive, you have a backup thing to say for when they have their reaction. Like, it's so intentional,
right,
in what you're doing. It's truly craftsmanship. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that craftsman word to transition to another unanswerable question, but this is a different unanswerable question. It's more of a what if. Like, what if when Rupert Murdoch, what if he truly went all in when he started Fox in the 90s, and instead of just putting The Late Show starring Joan Rivers against John Carson, he had kept Arsenio Hall when the comedian briefly took over in 1987. The number that I am looking for with all of this in mind is the number of weeks of the deal that Mr. Hall was given after showing signs of success with the sluggish Late Show. So Arsenio Hall picked up The Late Show on Fox, signed a contract, did it for X amount of weeks, and then was pretty much let go and went to, I don't know where it was in your place, but UPN or CW or WWR or wherever you got Arsenio Hall show back in the 90s, late 80s into the 90s for that brief run. None of that, all of that is to throw off the number that I'm going to ask you for, which is how many weeks. So exactly. You can't even remember that whole thing. So Joe, what are you going to go with? How many weeks?
How many weeks? I'm going to say 3 weeks.
Okay. Amira?
7.
7. Dr. D?
6.
6. Lindsay?
4.
4. And Amira with 7, you are closest to the 13-week deal that Arsenio Hall was able to sign. And ratings picked up, and they, instead of sign him, they let him go, and there was this whole thing with him going to Coming to America and blah, 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 blah. But in this fictional timeline, because this is what if, because, we're all run by Disney, Murdoch turns to Keenan Ivory Wayans and Damon and says, hey, can you guys create something for a late night audience, perhaps to challenge the SNL throne at that point when it was actually in the late 80s? That was about, it was on the downhill. You're waiting for Carvey and all them to kind of take off. You still have Lutz and such, and yeah, SNL was down enough. It was right to get picked, but he didn't, and there's no what if episode of that. And so all this relates to George Carlin because he was their first host, and 47 premieres later, Owen Wilson did the same honors to the lowest ratings in the show's history. Kardashian West, not the first no-talent celebrity to host a show, probably won't be the last. She nearly doubled the numbers and took part in jokes about her family and her dating habits. And then Michael Che made a joke on her on Weekend Update. And but whether or not it's in the studio, is SNL the last place where a comedian can actually offend their potential audience without repercussions? Amir?
I mean, there are repercussions. Even like one time there was a cast member that swore and they got fired. So, I mean, I feel like people can get fired even after one show of doing something wrong. I don't think anybody has like a show that you can just do whatever you want on. Like, unless it's like maybe you have more freedom on like the streaming things, but not on like NBC, you know? That's my answer.
So, Dr. D, I'll ask you: Is SNL still relevant?
I don't want to be the old white guy in the room, but I'm going to say no. I don't. It's not. And again, there's a myriad of reasons for it. Obviously, the amount of things that you can watch and stream, but it's not water cooler talk anymore. Even amongst comedians, like we all hang out in comedian circles, and there's not people talking about. I mean, occasionally a skit here, a skit there, some Weekend Upstate stuff that I think Michael Che and Colin Jost are probably the two premier talented people on the show right now. Again, I don't watch it regularly. I think there was an uptick. The old saying, "There's no bad publicity." When the Shane Gillis thing happened, I think there was an uptick in it. There was at least an interest. Why can't Shane Gillis be on this show? Because you would think, like you said, this was a show where you could be a little bit more irreverent. And definitely the counterpart in Living Color took irreverence to another level. But no, I think it's definitely more of and I'm going to use a terrible term, it's more of a safe space show nowadays.
Interesting. Joe, your thoughts on SNL? I was going to say, are you a watcher? Are you
Sure, yeah. Watching? I mean, I think that it's become something that is so much more relevant if it's a political year, there's an election coming up, in any kind of off season. I don't think that it's relevant at all. And even I think the way that we take in content and comedy now has changed so much, where you don't have to go on SNL to be, noticed. You don't have to go on a Tonight Show kind of show to be noticed. The fact that we're here right now on a podcast, like the fact that, comedians can have their own ways of getting their content out on their own. And we've democratized the ability to be noticed in a way that these weekly shows definitely wouldn't cut it.
Well, if it still was relevant, Lindsay, would you want to be a host or would you rather join the cast?
I would probably choose to be on the writing staff. That's probably just where I would see myself in terms of, surely the steps that would have to preempt being a host, definitely has my mind dancing right now. But I also was thinking, I think the water cooler talk, to a certain extent, what Dr. D was mentioning earlier, are those viral clips that people send around, that people post to their social media, that are just becoming more niche. And so, my sister getting very excited about the older women going to a nightclub sketch from last week. Very specific group of middle-aged women who that hit with. And, I think it's just about, that's the way we're consuming stuff these days. It is like things are just so much more targeted and finding their audience. To a certain extent, it becomes a meritocracy. If it's funny, people will share it.
Amira, do you take in SNL at all, or?
I've watched it before, but I think if I were to choose, I would just be a host, and it would be like Joe was saying, like in a political year, because it's more popular and viewed then. And like I like the adrenaline and the attention, and like being an actor, but doing sketches and stuff. But like I don't know if the nightlife is for me, because I know they go out afterwards and they party and stuff. So. But yeah.
So really, it's the nightlife, the after party scene that is the problem. Not necessarily being on the show or hosting. It's the dealing with the.
I'm just gonna go home and go to bed afterwards.
It's hectic too. Like the whole week, it's just stressful. I feel.
Yeah.
I think I'll burn out.
Lindsay, I don't disagree with what you're saying about like the niche, but I know again, Martin and I can be on a text or be on a phone conversation and mention 30 SNL skits that we liked as teenagers. For instance, the serial one colon blow, which to a 15-year-old doesn't really mean that much because we don't have colon issues like I do now. But I'm around teenagers every day. I coach high school basketball. I don't think I've heard a single teenager in the last 10 years of coaching high school basketball that's mentioned a single non-political skit on Saturday Night Live.
Well,
or
and
a
here's
commercial parody or something like that.
And here's another question with that. If you have a sketch that's 3-4 minutes long, are we as consumers, we're taking in these 30-second videos, 10-second videos. Some of these like little TikTok things are like 2 seconds long, and they're like they're sending them around to everybody. Like, are we as consumers even just not having the just ability to watch a 3 to 4 minute sketch?
But I was going to say,
beyond
wouldn't that then play right into SNL's hands, where they do their whole show is broken down, where you do have a minute of this sketch that's funny, and then there's 2 minutes of this sketch that might be funny, and there's the part where Kristen Wiig comes in and does this face or something like that on Weekend Update, that is like a TikTok sketch, that is like this short amount of content. So wouldn't that assist them? Wouldn't that make it easier for this to be consumed? Or no?
I think a generational thing. I think the fact that I am a middle-aged woman and I don't see Saturday Night Live as this thing that is so much younger than me is kind of evident of the like why it's not attractive to the kids, why they're not taking it in the same way. Because I think it's grown. I feel like Saturday Night Live has grown up with me to a certain extent. And I can even say my older sister always felt that like Adam Sandler was like too immature for her. So there was like an era that hit with me when I was a teenager that she was like, oh no, that's stupid. And like didn't even cross above a few years. So I wonder if it, what is relevance?
Well, and I also wonder too, to that point, if there were more cast members that are on there now that were in blockbuster movies that we were seeing, performing in other ways. Because if you think about all of the like SNL cast members of the 90s, and you think of so many big films from the 90s, there's a big Venn diagram there. And so if we were seeing the relevance of that work around us all the time, I think that might also add viewership as well.
Oh.
Joe just went nerdy teacher on that ass with a Venn diagram.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you did Venn diagram, but one could argue that SNL has produced movie stars like that throughout its history, where it sent off its people from Eddie Murphy and Chevy Chase and John Belushi to Dana Carvey and Mike Myers and Phil Hartman to who am I forgetting in that next? Oh, that's right, the whole Chris Farley,
Sandler, Rock Schneider, Stan Farley,
Chris Rock, to
then Will Ferrell and those guys.
Ferrell and to the Lonely Island Boys and Sandberg and everything like that. And you could argue Pete Davidson, who's often doing whatever Pete Davidson does, but that's a whole different side topic. And everybody's
I'm agreeing with you that that's the role they used to have, but I'm saying the power is not there in the way that they used to be able to propel the figures and stars from the current cast. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying.
Some of that may just have to do with sort of the age and power of Lorne Michaels. I mean, guy's in his 70s now, probably doesn't have as much sway as he did in Hollywood in the 80s and 90s to make those people breakout stars.
That's fair.
Yeah. Everyone's got a flight to catch, so I've added up the numbers if you haven't seen me looking down while you guys were discussing, and to see who's going to get to the terminal they want. The winning number for tonight is 106. And the winning, I will go up from lowest to highest. The lowest number is Dr. D at 46. Lindsay, you had 55. Amira, you were at 98, leaving Joe at 105. So you are the passenger with the closest number. I cut out a lot of the millions and the other extra zeros because math is hard, and when you start adding all that other stuff up, it's not worth it. So you are the final gate call for tonight. Congratulations. The terminal is yours.
Thank you. Is this a speech? Am I supposed to give a speech?
Yes.
30 seconds to do whatever you want. Feel free. You could also just tell us to get on our flights and get out of here. The choice is yours.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to share this space with all of you. I know Chris, but everybody else I met tonight, and it's been nice to get to know you, and hopefully we do this again because this was really cool. So thank you for inviting me on here.
All right. Well, can you describe an argument as concluded if it finishes but no conclusions were made? Here's hoping you would describe this time as entertaining and conclude the return to the terminal. I'd like to thank my guests, Amira, Dr. D, Joe, and Lindsay, and I wish you all a safe flight home. Have a good evening.
All right.
Thanks, Martin.
All right. Thank you very much.